I think Bitcoin now with the tariff side, this is different because you're not doing trade in gold. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, hey, I'll buy this from you and I'll ship you all this gold. You can't do that. So I think the difference is now the tariffs are a very important step for Bitcoin. And remember the other thing we've talked about, which I just think is the major thing over the next 12 months, it's the AI agents. And transactions and everything are going to pick up dramatically in the digital economy because the old economy with all this friction in it, a tariff is another friction. Frictions end up being how long it takes for your bank check to clear. All these frictions are going to start to come down. And so the digital economy coming out of this is going to be explosive globally.
The traditional mechanisms of global trade, slow, clunky, and reliant on physical commodities like gold, are increasingly out of sync with the lightning-fast pace of digital innovation. As new tariffs add more friction to an already strained system, Bitcoin isn't just surviving, it's thriving. These new trade barriers may seem like economic headwinds, but for Bitcoin, they're creating a tailwind. In an environment where speed, transparency, and independence matter more than ever, Bitcoin is being positioned not just as a hedge, but as a key infrastructure piece for the emerging digital economy.
So in 2020, we had Bitcoin just explode higher on the back of a new system of MMT. That was the belief. They've printed so much money, it's got to go higher. I think I'm a believer in the fact that Bitcoin and gold are outside the system. The globalized system that's been in place since post-World War II, if you didn't think it was over before, it's over. I think trade is now affected forever, and it forces people to do things more digitally, and it's going to force them to move more and more money into digital cross-border transactions.
Bitcoin has always been marketed as a decentralized alternative, but what we're now witnessing is its transition from a speculative asset to a legitimate conduit for global value exchange. As legacy systems falter under debt and division, Bitcoin thrives not because it's speculative, but because it's necessary. Tariffs, economic realignments, and global uncertainties are pushing the system into a new phase, and Bitcoin, not gold, is starting to take center stage. Nowhere is this shift clearer than in the context of President Trump's newly announced tariffs. Under this sweeping policy, all imports into the U.S. face a minimum 10% tariff, with some countries, like China, Vietnam, and the EU, seeing rates as high as 54%. These reciprocal tariffs, as Trump calls them, are meant to protect domestic industries and close the trade deficit. But critics argue they could spark a full-blown global trade war, hike consumer prices, and strangle supply chains already under pressure. For digital assets like Bitcoin, though, these same policies represent a break in the status quo and a wide-open lane.
When you say that Bitcoin is being used potentially for a trade, is it the thought process that, let's say if you had gold, you put it on a ship, you move it over somewhere, there's tariffs, right? You would get hit with those tariffs. Is it technically, if some supplier in Vietnam is doing something with somebody in the United States, there should be a tariff, they just can't enforce it? Or do you think that it is actually not subject to the tariffs, and that's why it's outside the system? Like there's a nuance between like, is it actually under the rules, but they can't enforce it, and so it's kind of like a gray area? Or is it just like no one's even thought yet about tariffing, the digital world?
What we're seeing is a gap between the systems governments regulate and the digital systems they struggle to define. Bitcoin lives in that gray zone. While governments scramble to track goods and levy taxes, digital currencies slip through undetected. The infrastructure simply isn't there to impose the same constraints. That makes Bitcoin more than just a financial asset. It makes it a loophole in a world defined by red tape.
I just think Bitcoin it's outside of that whole system. We know the government, in terms of the administration, supports Bitcoin. So to your point, gold is very easy to track, and it's a slow-moving thing. If you wanted to pay for something in gold, how long would it take to get the physical gold from point A to point B? In Bitcoin or in any kind of digital transaction, it should take seconds, and it should be over. And I just think that's what's going to happen, is that the new rails for the new economy, which were already happening anyway, think of it as this is just speeding up people looking at that vision.
Digital transactions aren't just faster, they're better suited to the world we're entering. In a future defined by artificial intelligence, real-time analytics, and borderless business, Bitcoin isn't just a store of value, it's the fuel. And every new tariff, every hiccup in supply chains, every diplomatic standoff just nudges more people to embrace that future a little sooner.
Since 2009, if you only bought when people start talking about a recession and recession probabilities get up to 50%, you're always making money. You might lose it for a month, but you're making money as it goes on, because we've made new all-time highs in Bitcoin. We've made new all-time highs in the S&P. And the only time when we haven't made them quickly is with significant job losses where nominal GDP stays lower. I'm telling people that's not going to happen.
Bitcoin's value proposition is strengthened by chaos. When traditional metrics signal downturns, Bitcoin historically responds with long-term gains. The looming recession, trade wars, and debt crises may wreak havoc elsewhere, but they act as catalysts for Bitcoin's growth. If anything, these stressors clarify its role in the financial ecosystem.
Printing is going to come. That's why Bitcoin stands out always as since the white paper came out, debt in the US was $9 trillion. It's now $36 trillion, and it's going to grow over the course of the next 10 years. It cannot go down because we have entitlements that are coming behind it.
As the US faces its ballooning debt with no realistic plan to shrink it, and as global leaders brace for the ripple effects of America's trade-first approach, Bitcoin offers a stable alternative that isn't tied to any one nation's fiscal recklessness. It's not a reaction to tariffs. It's an evolution beyond them.
The best things I've ever purchased in life, houses, property, stocks, anything, is during these panics. So that's good. My 401k, that if you type that into Google Trends, there are a lot of people in the country that are retired that are looking at their 401k and being like, oh my God. So it's not just Wall Street. It is some Main Street that has pension funds. But I agree with you 100% when it comes to young people. And I've talked to my son about it. And because my son is 19 and I can, he's traded crypto, he's used to the ups and downs. But the other thing is he's also grown up on social media. He's grown up without the same kind of brand loyalty that people do. Like, they just tend to move around more and more, and they're willing to give up something. They have an entrepreneurial mindset where something going down and losing money, they do view it somewhat as a badge of honor, but they also realize that they figured out the game, which is it always ends up going higher in the end.
Younger investors aren't waiting for permission from Wall Street or Washington. They're already in the game, already moving capital across borders digitally, already adapting to volatility as opportunity. In their world, Bitcoin isn't an experiment. It's a tool.
We actually got rates to be lower, and that's where I think we're going to be by the time we get to the end of the summertime, is the narrative will be shifting. I think a low in stocks will happen very, very soon because of the panic.
So what have we seen? Tariffs are fracturing the system they were designed to protect. They're isolating nations, jamming supply chains, and causing market turmoil. But for Bitcoin, all of this is opportunity. It's becoming the digital answer to the analog problems of traditional finance, a global asset that sidesteps friction, bypasses tariffs, and thrives in volatility. Is this the moment Bitcoin finally steps into its role as the foundation of a new, digital-first financial order? Or will regulators catch up and clamp down before it can truly take off? Let us know in the comments below.